My dad raised his glass and said he was proud of all his children. That's when I stood up, took the mic and told him, "Stop lying! You've never been proud of me. Not once." We were in the middle of our annual family reunion in Dallas, Texas. The backyard was full of uncles, cousins, old neighbors. Everyone had a cold beer in hand, barbecue smoke drifting through the summer air. Dad had his big moment, as always, standing under the fairy lights, grinning like a politician, and I had been waiting for that exact moment my whole life. Growing up, I was the quiet one, the helper, the responsible daughter. I handled the details nobody cared about, driving Mum to her appointments, cleaning up after Dad's poker nights, paying the caterer when his card got declined. Jason, my brother, was the golden boy with his startup in San Francisco. Emily, my sister, had her perfect husband and adorable kids. Dad loved to show them off, bragging about their photos on the mantel. Me? I was the shadow, the afterthought. I remember once, after I pulled a double shift at the hospital and still made it in time to set up Emily's baby shower, Dad called me so dependable, like I was some household appliance. It got worse as we got older. Jason would waltz in late, reeking of expensive bourbon, and Dad would clap him on the back, saying, "That's my boy." Emily would post another family photo on Facebook, and Dad would beam like she'd won an Olympic gold medal. Meanwhile, I handled all the crisis calls, the doctor bills, the tears behind closed doors. When I finally bought my own apartment last year, I invited Dad over. He looked around and said, "Not bad, for you." That stung deeper than any insult. He never saw me, never once said, "I'm proud of you," even when I saved his credit from collapsing. But I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just nodded and kept smiling. Because that night in Dallas, that was my stage, and he had no idea that I was about to rewrite the whole story, forever. After that night in Dallas, something inside me shifted. Dad tried to act like nothing happened. He even sent a family group text the next morning with a cheerful, "Great seeing everyone last night," as if he hadn't just been publicly called out. My siblings responded with their usual heart emojis and "Love you, Dad" messages. I stayed silent. In the following weeks, his true colours became clearer than ever. He started making passive-aggressive comments to me on our occasional calls like, "Maybe you should focus more on your job instead of stirring up drama," or, "I guess you've always been sensitive." It wasn't surprising. I had spent years swallowing those little cuts. But this time, every word felt like gasoline on a smouldering fire inside me. At Thanksgiving, he made a big show of praising Emily's perfect pumpkin pie and Jason's huge promotion, then turned to me and said, "What about you, Rachel? Any new men in your life? Or are you still married to your job?" He laughed. Everyone else forced awkward chuckles, their eyes darting anywhere but at me. That moment was my breaking point. It wasn't just about the humiliation anymore. It was about the years of erasure, the constant message that I didn't measure up, that I was some pathetic backup singer in a family obsessed with its two lead stars. That night, I went back to my small but cozy apartment. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, my makeup smeared from silent tears, and whispered to my reflection, "No more." My voice barely came out, but inside it felt like steel was forming in my spine. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I started making a list on a yellow legal pad. Every favour, every debt I covered, every lie I protected. I didn't realise how long that list would get. I began digging into my financial records. I printed every transfer slip showing how I'd paid off Dad's gambling debts when I was only 28. How I covered his emergency surgery bills when he claimed insurance would take care of it. How I sent money every Christmas to help him get by so he wouldn't have to tell Jason or Emily that he was broke. I gathered photos, the ones from my phone, the ones hidden in old envelopes in Mum's closet. Pictures of him with his poker buddies at a shady bar when he claimed he was at church retreats, snapshots of expensive watches and trips he took with money he guilt-tripped me into giving him. I started recording our calls. At first I felt guilty, like I was crossing some moral line, but each time he sneered or deflected or mocked me for being too emotional, I reminded myself why I was doing it. I collected voicemail messages where he slipped up and mentioned secret loans, payments, or all the times he dodged responsibilities. While I built my archive, I played my part perfectly. I answered his calls with a sweet, steady tone. I agreed to run small errands for him, picked up prescriptions, helped Mum shop for groceries. At Easter, I even offered to help clean up after the meal, like nothing had changed. He thought he had won. That I was back in my proper place, the quiet, obedient daughter always waiting in the wings to serve and smile. He never suspected that while I was scrubbing dishes in his kitchen, I was taking pictures of bank statements left on the counter. Or that when I helped Mum with her taxes, I carefully copied every record that revealed his secret cash withdrawals and gambling losses. I knew he had always relied on me to protect the family image. He knew I hated conflict, that I would rather bleed in private than make a scene. That was his greatest weapon against me, his confidence that I'd stay small, that I'd keep the peace at any cost. But I had learned something that night in Dallas. Silence wasn't loyalty, it was self-betrayal. And I was done betraying myself. I started meeting with a lawyer. Quietly. In a small office above a florist's shop downtown. She specialized in family financial disputes and hidden asset investigations. Each meeting felt like shedding an old skin. I was no longer the shadow. I was becoming someone real, someone sharp. At the same time, I scheduled counseling sessions. I didn't want to carry the weight of rage alone. My therapist encouraged me to keep a journal of every small manipulation and every new discovery. I filled pages faster than I imagined possible. Some nights I'd wake up at 2 a.m., remember some forgotten insult or lie, and rush to write it down before I lost it again. Meanwhile, Dad kept performing his public charade. Facebook posts about family unity, Sunday selfies with Jason at the golf course, cute comments on Emily's family photos. He even sent me a card on my birthday, scribbled, "With love you, kiddo, proud of all you do," as if those words could erase decades of neglect. I pretended to accept it all. I sent a polite thank you text, short and sugary. He probably thought I had softened, that I'd finally accepted my place. At one family dinner, he offhandedly joked that maybe I should get a roommate, so someone can finally keep you company in that sad little apartment. The words slid off his tongue like cheap wine. Jason laughed. Emily looked embarrassed but said nothing. I felt the urge to throw my drink in his face, to scream, to storm out. But instead I calmly dabbed my mouth with my napkin, smiled, and said, "Maybe you're right." Inside, though, the walls of his carefully constructed kingdom were already cracking. I had everything I needed. I knew then that the final act wouldn't be loud or violent. It would be surgical, quiet, precise. He thought he had humiliated me for the last time. What he didn't know was I was just getting started. I waited until early spring to set everything in motion. It was a quiet Wednesday morning when I walked into my lawyer's office with a thick folder, carefully labelled and organised, receipts, bank statements, printed text messages, photos, a decade of secrets laid bare. She looked through it slowly, her eyes widening as she pieced it all together. "This is thorough," she finally said. I nodded. "I've had a lot of time to prepare." She smiled, a small, knowing smile that felt like the first true validation I had ever received. We finalised a legal package addressed to Mum, containing every financial lie Dad had built his entire image on. Alongside it, we drafted a detailed report to send to certain family members. Jason, Emily, and a few trusted relatives who deserved to know the truth. I chose the next family dinner as my stage. A Sunday evening, warm air drifting through the patio, laughter floating around like cheap perfume. Jason was bragging about a new investor, Emily was sharing photos of her daughter's dance recital, and Dad was basking in his favourite role, the proud patriarch. I stood up, my hands steady. "I have something to share," I said calmly. They all turned, expecting a polite toast, or maybe an apology for causing drama last year. Instead, I placed a stack of envelopes on the table, one for each of them, each labelled, each holding a curated collection of receipts and evidence. "Go ahead," I said. "Take your time." Dad's face drained of colour. His hands trembled as he reached for his envelope. I watched as Jason's smirk vanished. Emily's eyes darted back and forth in disbelief. Slowly, they flipped through pages of proof. Gambling debts I had paid off, hidden cash withdrawals, old photos of Dad's late-night escapades, bank transfers under false pretenses. Dad slammed his hand on the table. "This is insane. You can't do this. You think they'll believe you?" I leaned forward, my voice soft but firm. "They already do, and Mum deserves the truth more than anyone." Emily started crying. Jason looked like a man staring down a burning building he thought was fireproof. Dad rose from his chair, sputtering. "You're ungrateful, after everything I did for this family." I cut him off, still calm. "You didn't do it for the family, you did it for yourself. And I'm done protecting your lies." He tried to grab my arm, but I stepped back, untouched. Jason moved to stand beside him, as if trying to steady a falling monument. But there was nothing left to prop up. By the time Mum walked into the room, she was already holding her own envelope. She looked at Dad, then at me, and I saw it. The realization crashing into her like a wave against rock. Her hands shook, but she didn't drop the papers. She didn't scream. Instead, she turned to him and said in a low, steady voice, "I knew something wasn't right. Thank you, Rachel." Dad's mask shattered. He started begging. "Honey, please. It's not what you think. She's twisting everything." But it was too late. The king had no throne left. From that moment, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. I had always imagined revenge as a loud, fiery explosion. But this was different. It was surgical, clean, final. In the following weeks, Mum filed for separation, using the documents I provided to secure her share of the retirement funds and house. Jason and Emily stopped answering Dad's calls. His carefully curated image of the perfect father crumbled overnight. He tried calling me, leaving voicemails filled with rage and desperation, but I didn't pick up. I focused on rebuilding my own life. I applied for a senior nursing leadership program I had always put off, and I got in. I started therapy again, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand how to move forward without carrying that old pain like an anchor. People asked me if I felt guilty. My answer? Never. For decades, I sacrificed my peace to keep a fragile family illusion alive. I covered his debts, protected his pride, absorbed his jabs, and accepted invisibility as my place. I thought loyalty meant silence, that love meant shrinking myself to keep him comfortable. But love isn't obedience. Loyalty isn't erasure. I no longer had to answer to his late-night calls demanding money, or sit through dinners where I was the punchline. I no longer had to pretend to be grateful for his crumbs of validation. I took it all back. My time, my energy, my self-respect. When I finally blocked his number, I felt like I was closing the last chapter of a book I never wanted to read in the first place. My apartment, once filled with tense quiet, now felt like a sanctuary. I didn't make any grand announcements on social media. I didn't parade my victory. Instead, I started small. Buying a new coffee machine I always thought was too extravagant. Painting my bedroom a deep blue that felt like standing under a midnight sky. Signing up for dance classes because I wanted to move again, to feel alive again. I learned that the sweetest revenge isn't about destruction, it's about reclamation. Dad lost more than his family's respect. He lost his power over me. Watching him stumble through his empty calls and angry messages was satisfying, but the true victory was internal. I had rewritten my role in this story, from the obedient helper in the shadows to the woman who finally stepped into her own light. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just watched as he realized the fortress he had built out of lies had no foundation. Now, I spend my evenings dancing, drinking my favorite wine, and falling asleep without dread gnawing at my chest. I built a new life, one honest step at a time. And I have never slept better. He thought I would stay quiet forever. He was wrong. After it all, I found myself in a small, sunlit apartment on the edge of Austin. The first morning I woke up there, I listened to the birds outside my window instead of Dad's angry voicemails. The air felt different, like it had been scrubbed clean after a long, heavy rain. I started decorating slowly, choosing each piece intentionally. A second-hand armchair in a deep forest green that felt like home. A woven rug in warm earth tones, soft under my feet. A simple bookshelf where I finally placed my own framed photos. Snapshots of me hiking alone, me at the hospital graduation, me smiling with genuine joy, not forced for someone else's approval. I joined the ladyship program I had always put off, and on the first day I stood in front of a room full of bright young nurses, introducing myself not as Frank's daughter or the family peacemaker, but simply as Rachel. Strong, independent, capable. I started volunteering on weekends, mentoring young women just starting in healthcare. We sat in small groups in a local community centre, drinking cheap coffee and talking about boundaries, self-respect, and what it really means to be enough, on your own terms. Evenings became my sanctuary. No tense dinners, no forced smiles across the table, no waiting for a text that never came. I lit candles that smelled like cedar and vanilla, played soft jazz, and sometimes just sat in the dark, letting my mind finally rest without replaying old battles. I took up pottery, something I hadn't done since college. The first time I touched the cool clay, it felt like pressing my fingers into a new beginning. Each spin of the wheel was a quiet revolution, each finished bowl a small victory. Mum called me one morning after her separation was finalised. Her voice was tired but steady, like a long-held breath finally exhaled. "I don't know who I am without him," she said softly. "You'll figure it out," I told her, "one choice at a time." We talked for hours that day. It wasn't about blame or guilt, just two women learning how to rebuild, brick by careful brick. Ethel Reddy redefined the kitchen as an immersive. I stopped checking my phone for his messages. I stopped replaying those family dinners in my head. Slowly, I realized I didn't just win. I had outgrown the entire game. When people ask me now if I regret it, airing it all out, dismantling the perfect image, stepping out of the shadows, I think about my quiet mornings, my clean, unburdened evenings, the laughter that bubbles out of me without warning, and I know there is no regret, only relief. Look back at the woman I was, the one who smiled through dismissive comments, who held back tears in crowded rooms, who thought love meant sacrificing your own voice to keep someone else comfortable. I don't mourn her. I honour her. She was doing her best with what she knew. But she had to die for me to be reborn. I've learnt that kindness without boundaries isn't love. It's self-erasure. That forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, not a pass you hand out to those who hurt you. That sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't to stay quiet, but to speak up and walk away. Never confuse silence with weakness. Those who underestimate quiet women often forget that storms too begin in stillness. I see the world differently now. I see women at the grocery store, in line at the pharmacy, on the bus. I see the silent negotiations in their eyes, the quiet apologies they swallow, the invisible burdens they carry. I want to reach out and tell them, you don't have to keep holding it all. You can put it down. You can start again. If you've ever felt like the background character in your own life, if you've ever been told to stay small, to not make waves, to be grateful for crumbs, I want you to know you're not alone, and you are stronger than you can imagine. I don't hate my father anymore. I don't even think of him much these days. Hate takes energy, and I've decided my energy is mine now, for my students, my pottery, my walks at dusk. I don't want revenge to define me. I want my peace to define me. Some nights, when the city lights glow like distant campfires and my apartment is hushed and warm, I sit with a cup of tea and feel the softest smile spread across my face. I smile not because he lost, but because I found myself. He thought he broke me. He was wrong.